Let's put the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to like and subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on YouTube. We want to get up to 500 likes on this show. So smash that like button and also subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on YouTube. And also a programming reminder that Inside College Basketball Now will be coming to you on Mondays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock Eastern with live episodes. Monday, we're on CBS Sports Network. Thursdays, we're right here on YouTube. And if you can't be with us for those episodes, get with us later in the day on your commute home on Apple or Spotify or during your early morning workout. We need an army with us for each and every show we do here on Inside College Basketball Now. And we need you to be all you can be. And in addition to those live shows on Mondays and Thursdays, Inside College Basketball Now will be bringing you additional episodes each and every week featuring exclusive interviews with some of the biggest and best names in the sport. Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, I will be checking in with Illinois head coach Brad Underwood before the Illini host Michigan Friday night in Champaign. That is a big game on the horizon this weekend. We'll get to plenty of those as the show continues. But as always, we start with three big things. And the first big thing is obvious. It is going to relate to what we saw in Hartford, Connecticut on Wednesday night, and it's that UConn sent a message with its win against St. John's. And look, I never questioned UConn as a national championship contender. I never questioned the idea of UConn going to its third Final Four in 4 seasons under Dan Hurley. I also never questioned the idea of UConn bouncing back from St. John's beating the Huskies a couple of weeks ago at Madison Square Garden. But what UConn did to St. John's in Hartford on Wednesday night was something that I had never seen before in my life. Now, why do I say that? When you think about the great coaches that we have now in college basketball, and there's a number of them, only 3 have won multiple national championships. Bill Self, Dan Hurley, and Rick Pitino. And in all my years covering Rick Pitino's teams, going back all the way to his early years at Louisville, I have never seen another team do to Rick Pitino's team what we saw UConn do on Wednesday night. The final score was 72-40. It felt a lot worse than that. It was a 32-point win. It felt like 50 or 60. The 40 points scored were the fewest points ever scored under a team coached by Rick Pitino, going back from Boston University to Providence, to Kentucky, to Louisville, to Iona, to St. John's. The 32-point margin of victory was also the most ever by a Rick Pitino team at St. John's. Prior to Wednesday night, the biggest loss that St. John's had suffered under Rick Pitino was a 16-point loss to Michigan in his second game as St. John's head coach during the 23-24 season. This wasn't just a blowout. It was a dominant performance by UConn, who, in my opinion, had its most dominant performance against a high-level opponent since UConn beat Illinois in the 2024 Elite Eight when the Huskies went on a 30-0 run in the second half at TD Garden in Boston. And there has been a bit of a narrative that has been shifted over the past couple of weeks that Duke, that Michigan, and that obviously Arizona were in a class by themselves at the top of the sport. That narrative is now over because the UConn team we saw last night looked like it could easily be in the ring with Duke, with Michigan, with Arizona. And look, UConn has a different dynamic than other teams that are at the top of the sport. And what do I mean by this? Part of the positive of being in a power conference is you have quad one opportunity after quad one opportunity. And when you are in a league like the Big East is right now in 2026, and you are not getting a Pez dispenser full of quad one opportunities, and you're constantly beating up on teams that are not in a situation where they are going to be close to the NCAA tournament, it makes it very, difficult to keep your players constantly engaged. Because I remember sitting once at a diner/deli with Bob Knight, and he told me and the other people at the table something that I thought was very, very on point. When you are dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids, sometimes the greatest opponent that you deal with is human nature. And if you're UConn and you're in a conference like the Big East, where only 3 of the 11 teams in the conference are projected to be in the NCAA tournament, you are going to have potential potholes in your schedule, and it's going to be difficult to keep the kids engaged. Game in, game out, practice in, practice out. That was not the case Wednesday night. Now, I have said since last summer, when I have sat in this seat and given you content beyond content about the Big East, about St. John's and UConn, I have said that I expected multiple situations to emerge between St. John's and UConn in the 25-26 season. I thought there would be at least 3 meetings. We've seen 2. I would be shocked if a third meeting did not happen in the Big East tournament title game at Madison Square Garden on March 14th, the night before Selection Sunday. Now, with that said, for all intents and purposes, we also saw the blueprint of what could lead UConn to its third Final Four in the last 4 years. And that blueprint is obviously built around Tarris Reed, who was absolutely ridiculous against Zuby Ejiofor in the middle on Wednesday night in Hartford. 20 points, 11 rebounds, 6 block shots, Now, one of the things that we have to talk about in terms of consistent things that have resonated throughout UConn's run here under Dan Hurley. One of the biggest things that was a linchpin in those back-to-back national title runs in 23 and 24 was the element at the center spot. In 2023, you had Adama Sanogo and Donovan Clingan splitting up the time. In 2024, you had Donovan Clingan and Samson Johnson splitting up the time. When Reed plays at this level, like he's one of the best big men in college basketball, and Eric Ryba gives you a player who's one of the best reserves in college basketball, now you have a formula that has been a common theme for Dan Hurley's teams at UConn that have went far in the NCAA tournament. As far as St. John's goes, you have to obviously burn the tape. You have to obviously be in a situation where you are going to turn the page quickly. But now in terms of the race of the Big East, in one 40-minute stretch, all of the pressure has went off UConn and it's went on to St. John's in terms of the race for a regular season championship. Now, why do I say that? Well, it's real simple. UConn is in a situation where it is going to play Seton Hall at home this weekend and then go on the road to take on Marquette in Milwaukee. St. John's has to come back to Madison Square Garden and play Villanova. It will also have to host Georgetown, and then it has to go on the road to play Seton Hall in Newark. St. John's clearly has the more difficult schedule. If both teams win out, a common opponent tiebreaker will decide who gets the 1 seed in the Big East tournament. But to make things obviously in layman's terms, if both teams win out, St. John's and UConn will share a Big East regular season title, which would set up an epic Big East tournament title game March 14th at Madison Square Garden, the Saturday night before Selection Sunday. Now, UConn, because of what happened last weekend, Houston, obviously in the middle of a 3-game losing streak, Iowa State losing at BYU, the door has opened for UConn to be the 4th number 1 seed, along with Duke, along with Michigan, and obviously along with Arizona. Now, with that said, if UConn is a 1 seed, it is going to be the 1 seed in the South region. Arizona is going out west. Michigan is going to be in the Midwest, and Duke is going to be in the East, unless something crazy happens. We know that. We understand that. So if you're UConn, are going to be on the 1 line if you're in the South, and the big storyline to watch from now until Selection Sunday, and we would expect Kelvin Sampson's squad to bounce back in a major way, but you would expect Houston to be the 2 seed in the South, barring something unforeseen. But for a couple of days, we have to remember This is only February. Now, the second big thing I want to get to, and it's a hard thing to put into motion, but I think it's a topic that we have to start talking about, is Todd Golden underrated as a head coach? Now, that might be a crazy thing to say about a coach who is coming off a national championship. That might be a crazy thing to say about a coach who, again, is still very, very young in his first power conference job. And all he has done over the last 2 years is go 58-10 and be in a situation where he is going to be a top 16 protected seed for the second year in a row. He is going to be obviously on the heels of winning Florida's third national championship. But I feel like the conversations now that are centered on the top coaches in the game do not include Todd Golden and should. Now, Todd Golden a year ago had a special team, a team that had, in my opinion, one of the better backcourts that we had seen in quite some time, with Walter Clayton, with Will Richard, with Denzel Aberdeen, and obviously a really, really tough squad. Elijah Martin was also a difference maker for Florida on the perimeter. All of those guys were gone after this season or last season. Now, coaches have always told me that anytime you are measuring a team for the upcoming year, you have to look first at what returning personnel they have in the backcourt. Florida had none. Florida played a ruthless non-conference schedule, which included a game against UConn at Madison Square Garden in the Jimmy V Classic, a game in Las Vegas against Arizona on the first night of the season, and also a game at Duke as part of the ACC SEC Challenge. Florida took some lumps early, but now Florida, on the heels of last night's win against Texas and Austin, is starting to be in a situation where it is in position to amplify its potential seed on Selection Sunday. With the win at Texas, Florida earned its 9th Quad 1 victory of the season. Florida has 9 Quad 1 wins. The only programs right now in college basketball that have more Quad 1 wins than the Gators are Duke, Michigan, and Arizona. You look at Florida's schedule. There's a massive game Saturday in Gainesville against Arkansas. There's obviously another home game against Mississippi State, and there's a road game at Kentucky. 2 of those 3 games are Quad 1 opportunities, and then that doesn't count the SEC tournament. I see a major runway right now for Florida to play its way onto the 2 line and push to be one of the higher rated 2 seeds on Selection Sunday if the Gators can keep stacking Quad 1 wins and go deep, and I mean deep, in the SEC tournament. Also want to remind you to leave your comments in the chat. I will get to them later in the show. Jon Rothstein here at Inside College Basketball Now. But as we've seen the balance throughout the year in the SEC, we are now, in my opinion, seeing the separation with Florida. Florida has won 13 games in SEC play. 11 have been by double figures. Different players have taken turns in the spotlight for the Gators. Tommy Hauck has been obviously the consistent piece all season. Ruben Chinyelu was a guy who went from being a piece to the puzzle to maybe the National Defensive Player of the Year in a walking double-double. Tommy Hauck was the guy who started it. Chinyelu took the baton from him, and now it's Alex Condon who's playing at a really, really high level. Klavshar, one of the great glue guys in the sport, balances the floor. Fland is more comfortable. Xavier Lee is more comfortable. Florida is a team at 22-6 that looks like one that can get back to a Final Four, and for whatever reason, Todd Golden is not getting the attention that he deserves at the top of the sport. And look, I'm even guilty of it to an extent, because I think if you're looking right now at the National Coach of the Year list, which I will unveil over the next week or so on this podcast and on other mediums, I'm looking at Fred Hoiberg as being the favorite to be the National Coach of the Year. We get that. We understand that. You have to give credit to John Shire. You have to give credit to Dusty May at Michigan, and you have to give credit to Tommy Lloyd. Those guys are non-negotiables as of today. And we would be remiss if we did not obviously tip our cap to what Travis Steele is doing at Miami of Ohio. Todd Golden is in that next tier. But Todd Golden does not get talked about in the same light as some of the other young up-and-coming coaches of the sport. But he has done an elite job at the University of Florida. and he obviously won a national championship, but he is following up that run with another memorable season. And again, when you look at the dynamics right now in the SEC, Florida has a path, in my opinion, to being in a scenario where it can make a play towards a higher seed in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if pushing UConn for the 4th number 1 seed is within reach, but here's something we have to remember. When you look at UConn's quad 1 opportunities, and again, this is the other side of not being in a major power conference, which I know the UConn administration always thinks about, and I know that's a football decision, but it's something, too, that UConn does not have, despite its roots, history, and tradition in the Big East. UConn, if it's the 2 seed in the Big East tournament, could have a quad 1 opportunity in the semifinals against Villanova. And then obviously if it played St. John's in the championship game, it would have another quad 1 opportunity. But there is a strong chance, if things shift here, and let's just say UConn got the 1 seed in the Big East tournament, that UConn would have as many quad 1 opportunities remaining this season, let's just say it's 2, as Florida has before the end of regular season play in the Big East. The last 2 national champions, UConn and Florida, hitting their stride at the right time. Right now, both are, in my opinion, cemented to be top 12 seeds in the NCAA tournament. Would not shock me if they're going to be top 8 on Selection Sunday. Okay, the third big thing. Virginia Duke headlines a great stretch of games this weekend. And obviously, when you look at this weekend, and I'm doing this show on Thursday, Michigan State Purdue tonight at Mackey Arena is a great Big Ten game. These 2 teams, obviously, now really just playing for NCAA tournament seeding, positioning in the Big Ten tournament. You've got 2 of the best coaches in the sport, Izzo against Painter. You've got 2 of the best point guards in the sport with Jeremy Fears and with Braden Smith. And obviously, you've got 2 programs that truly respect each other. Friday night, Michigan against Illinois. And again, we're going to have Brad Underwood here on Inside College Basketball Now on Friday. Michigan against Illinois. Michigan coming off the loss against Duke. Michigan in a situation, obviously, where it's trying to do everything it can to recalibrate its efforts in being the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Illinois, to me, is a team that is one of the more unique teams we've seen this season because of the great offensive firepower. And Illinois has not been healthy for the majority of the last month, even though it got healthier over the past week with Stojakovic and Boswell coming into the lineup. But Michigan is a team that is going to force you to take outside shots, and Illinois can shoot from all its front court positions with the Ivasiches, with Merkovich, with Hummerkaus. I think it's a fascinating contrast. It's a big-time feel for a big-time game Friday night in Champaign. But those games, Michigan, Illinois, and Michigan State, Purdue, probably don't have as much of a bearing on the Big Ten regular season title because Michigan is on such solid ground in that quest. And that is why, if there is one game this weekend that I am truly looking forward to the most, if there is one game this weekend that I am really excited to see, it is the matchup at Cameron Indoor Stadium on Saturday between Virginia and Duke. Now, nobody really has brought this to the forefront because Duke beat Michigan last weekend, and Duke is in the pole position to be the top overall seed in the NCAA tournament. But Virginia is still making a push to win an ACC regular season title. And the only way that Virginia can do that is by winning the game Saturday at Cameron Indoor Stadium. Now, we have talked, and I have talked ad nauseum about the importance of roster composition in this climate. Not just recruiting, but having the ability to put together a team. It's like putting together a great band. You have to have the keyboard player be able to mesh with the lead singer and the drums and all that stuff. Ryan Odom is a guy who deserves to be talked about when we talk roster composition with Dusty May at Michigan, with Tommy Lloyd at Arizona. And Ryan Odom, who has previously taken UMBC, VCU, and Utah State to the NCAA tournament, is now going to take his 4th school to the NCAA tournament at the age of 50. But he has, in my opinion, surpassed expectations this year at 25-3 in year 1 because of the roster composition that exists in Charlottesville. And it's a blend of all different players. There's international players. There's freshmen. There's transfers. There's a lot of really good things going on right now at Virginia. But my question is this, and this is with all due respect to Ryan Odom, how would we be talking about a 25-3 Virginia team if Tony Bennett was the coach? Because it feels like right now, Virginia, even though I have them projected as a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, is still a bit under the radar nationally. That can change on Saturday. Now, Virginia is a team that can really shoot the basketball. 36% is a team from 3. Shooters on the wings with Jakari White, with Sam Lewis, with Malik Thomas, a steady veteran point guard in Dallin Hall, and legitimate size up front with Testa Ritter, foreign big man who's had a big-time impact. He'll be a first-team All-ACC player. Johan Grunlow, Ugana Onyenso, Devin Tillis. Now, Will Wade made this point earlier this week on this show on Inside College Basketball Now. Virginia is the only team in college basketball to have 2 players who average 2 block shots or more a game. Virginia is a team physically that can look Duke in the eye with Gongba and with Cam Boozer. Virginia is a team, depth-wise, that will be able to withstand Cameron Indoor Stadium. Virginia has a senior point guard in Dallin Hall that was in the NCAA tournament last year at BYU and went to the Sweet 16. Virginia has enough shooting to have multiple guys to put the ball in the basket. And Virginia has one of the best freshmen and one of the best six men in the country in Chance Mallory. Now, because this has been such a great freshman class, you don't hear about Chance Mallory because there's so much star power. But with that said, I think you are going to see a scenario where Saturday's game will be appointment television at the highest level. There's other great games on Saturday. I'm juiced about Arkansas, Florida. I'm juiced about Arizona playing Kansas. St. Mary's, Gonzaga. The last time we're going to see them as teams in the West Coast Conference play a regular season game. But if there is one game that I am most interested in on Saturday, Villanova St. John's is another good one at Madison Square Garden. It's Virginia Duke. And I think a big storyline when you look at national perception changing, the ACC has had a great run hiring coaches the past couple of years. Ryan Odom at Virginia, Jay Lucas at Miami, Will Wade at NC State, Pat Kelsey at Louisville, and also I want to give a credit to Mark Madsen, even though Cal obviously came into the ACC from the Pac-12. Mark Madsen's doing a great job at Cal and has the Bears right now, according to me, in the NCAA tournament. But this is only February. Want to get your thoughts and comments when I return. Lots to get to. A big weekend ahead. Is Todd Golden underrated? What does last night mean for St. John's? And also, does your perception change on UConn? Plus anything else. I'll also give you my Rothstein rankings as I do each and every week. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now.
This is why we do this every March.
Major slam!
It is a basketball party.
It's March! Expect the unexpected!
All right, Jon Rothstein back here on Inside College Basketball Now. Want to get to your questions here in the live chat. So please leave a comment, and the chat is bleeding as usual. Let's take some questions here. B. Nolan 2000 says, John, who is your favorite for SEC Player of the Year? Well, for me, it's easy. It's Darius Acuff. Look, LeBaron Philon has been elite for Alabama, has not played, obviously, in a couple of games, but Darius Acuff, to me, is the best point guard that John Calipari has ever coached in college. And that's saying a lot when you think about the guys that preceded him. Wall, Derrick Rose, Tyreek Evans, De'Aaron Fox. This guy is appointment television at the point guard position. See what other questions we have right here. Vancouver 2004 says Golden and Hurley are the top 2 coaches right now in college basketball. Golden is more likable. Well, if Dan Hurley's listening to the show, he won't like that comment, but I hear what you're saying. Dan Hurley is very likable. We had him in studio. Very, very obviously likable guy, but just, he's intense. He's into the game. So what makes him a great coach. But look, I said this last night on Inside College Basketball on CBS Sports Network. The last two national champions, Florida and UConn, are playing their best basketball when it matters most. UConn, 32 points better than St. John's. Florida, 8 wins in a row under Todd Golden. Let's see where we're going right now. Other questions we could take? Could we see a Cinderella team or two? That's from Jared Williams, 8786. Well, look, it's going to depend on the matchups. I do think this is all cyclical. There's a lot of people obviously casting a narrative right now that Cinderella is dead because of NIL in the NCAA tournament. Look, McNeese beat Clemson last year. Clemson won 27 games. 3 years ago, in the Final Four, we had Florida Atlantic play San Diego State. So these things, in my opinion, are not completely off the table, but it's going to be interesting to see what, if anything, transpires. Look, St. Louis is a team that a lot of people thought from a non-power conference could make a major, major run. St. Louis also is in a situation where it has lost the last couple of weeks to Dayton and obviously Rhode Island, which obviously hurts their NCAA tournament seed. Take another question here before we go. A lot of St. John's talk, a lot of Florida talk. Sam Paid U4R says, John, what about the Miami Red Hawks? Will they make it to the big dance? Look, Miami at 28-0 is one of the great stories, if not the great story right now in college basketball. I'm so happy for Travis Steele, who started his head coaching career at Xavier and is now flourishing at Miami. I still say this. If Miami loses to anybody other than Akron in the MAC conference tournament or beforehand, I think it's going to be really, really tight on Selection Sunday. Now, here's another thing I will say. If Miami didn't win the MAC tournament and still got in the NCAA tournament, it would be really cool to see Miami playing down the road in Dayton during March Madness. There's a lot of things that have to happen for that to obviously transpire, but that's another storyline to keep an eye on. Miami, though, has an interesting dynamic because if you are a bubble team right now, and we'll get more and more into the bubble as we count down to Selection Sunday, but if you are a bubble team right now, the one team that you are unequivocally rooting for to win its conference tournament is Miami, because if Miami loses and then makes the field, it's going to take an at-large spot from another one of these teams that's on the bubble. And that brings me to an interesting transition, and I know I go down this rabbit hole a lot, but I'm going to go down now. If you are living in college basketball, if you are eating, breathing, and sleeping college basketball 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the last thing you are talking about right now, and the last thing you are saying when you sample all of this in the sport, is that we should expand the NCAA tournament. Now, I know that expansion may be imminent. I know that the Power Four commissioners are all banding together in an effort to get more access for their teams. This is one thing I want to say, and I'm somebody who did a bracket projection for Friday coming up earlier today when I was going through the numbers. I have 11 teams projected to make it from the SEC. I have 9 teams projected to make it from the Big Ten. That's 20 teams out of a 68-team field. I have 9 teams projected to make it out of the ACC, and I have 8 projected to make it from the Big 12. So the thought is always we need more access to the NCAA tournament. 9 from the ACC, 8 from the Big 12, that's 17. The SEC is going to give you 11, that's 28. And then the Big Ten having 9, that's 37. That's 37 out of the 68 slots from 4 leagues. How much more access do you need if you are talking about access to the tournament? Here's the bottom line. The teams that are at the back end of the bracket, as we say every year, are limping their way to Selection Sunday. And it's just a fact of life right now. USC is one of the teams that's trying to play their way into the NCAA tournament. USC has lost at home this year to Oregon, to Northwestern, to Washington. Don't want to disparage any of those teams. Don't want to disparage USC, who I feel if Rodney Rice was healthy would have a Sweet 16 team. But that's the teams that would easily be in the NCAA tournament if you go to 76 teams. Ohio State, who has not won an NCAA tournament game since 2022, has one quad win. It's on the road at Northwestern, and that only became a quad one win when Northwestern obviously went on the road the other night and beat Indiana. That's what we're dealing with right now. These are the teams that you are making a case for tournament expansion. You can do what you want, but there is plenty of access points for the Power Four conferences. But you can only deal, as Hyman Roth said in The Godfather Part 2, with the fact that this is the business we've chosen. And for me, I am always trying to find teams this time of year who are in power conferences who might be slightly off the radar, who have a chance to break open a bracket and go to the Final Four. So my weekly Rothstein rankings, I'm going to give you right now from 5 to 1. 5 teams who are slightly off the radar, who I think could be a dark horse, given the right draw, to make a Final Four in Indianapolis. Number 5 is Louisville. Louisville came in as a top 10 or 15 team to start this season. They obviously dealt with a lot of Michael Brown being in and out of the lineup, but Louisville on a neutral court is going to have a perimeter with Brown, with Ryan Conwell, with Isaac McNeely that's as electrifying and as talented as any in the sport. Louisville is a team I would not want to see on a neutral court. Number 4 is Tennessee. Now, how can you say a team is a dark horse Final Four team after they've played in each of the last 2 Elite Eights? It's real simple. Tennessee is not going to go into this NCAA tournament with the same type of seed that it went into the last couple of NCAA tournaments with. Tennessee's got a veteran point guard in Jacoby Gillespie, who was part of a Sweet 16 run last year at Maryland. Tennessee's got rim protection with Felix Okpara, and Tennessee has a major, major talent in a guy who isn't probably mentioned enough when it comes to this great freshman class in Nate Ament. So Tennessee, to me, is a dark horse Final Four team. Number 3, Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin, I know, lost on the road at Oregon last night, but Wisconsin has won at Illinois. Wisconsin has won at Michigan, the only team to win at Michigan this year. And Wisconsin's also a team that has big-time veteran guard play with John Blackwell and with Nick Boyd. Nick Boyd, we have to remember, a player that played in the Final Four at Florida Atlantic. Number 2 is Alabama. One of the scariest teams, I would say, in the sport is the Crimson Tide because of their shot-making ability. LeBaron Philon's an All-American. He did not play in an SEC game on Wednesday night against Mississippi State. Alabama had 63 points at the half. Let that sink in for a sec. And number 1 is Arkansas. I'm very curious to see how the Razorbacks perform on the road Saturday against Gainesville. But again, on a neutral court, and I've seen and covered Arkansas on a neutral court this year when they went to Chicago and lost to Duke. Arkansas's guard play with Acuff, with Malik Thomas, now with Billy Richmond too starting to become more of a threat, is good enough to match up with any team in the country. There's a number of players, Brazil, Richmond, Wagner, who were part of that run last year to the Sweet 16 with the Razorbacks. And again, March is about guard play, and there is no guard at the point guard spot right now in college basketball that's better than Darius Acuff. Let's get the 3 good nuggets right here before we get out of here. Nugget number 1, a big red milestone. Nebraska improved to 24-4 on Wednesday night against Maryland. The program record for wins for Nebraska is 26. That happened in 1991 when the Huskers were a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament under Danny Nee. Nugget number 2, Jakari is going deep. I'm talking about Virginia's Jakari White. Jakari White has attempted 146 field goals this season. 111 were from three-point range. Nugget number 3, making a dent. I'm talking about UCLA's Donovan Dent. The talented point guard in the Bruins' last 2 games, wins over USC and Illinois, has 22 assists and no turnovers. That was not a misprint or anything like that. Okay, 5 games to watch. Friday night, we've got Michigan against Illinois in Champaign. Then Saturday, we've got Virginia at Duke. I talked about that one. Kansas at Arizona, Arkansas at Florida, then Villanova at St. John's. Big game for the Red Storm. Then 5 under-the-radar games. Tonight, Michigan State at Purdue. Saturday, Texas Tech at Iowa State. Texas Tech 2-0 since JT Toppin went out of the lineup. Alabama's at Tennessee. Gonzaga against St. Mary's, the last regular season game for those two to play head-to-head. And then on Sunday, Purdue at Ohio State. That game, to me, feels like a must-win for the Buckeyes at large chances for the NCAA tournament. I know Ohio State is going to be in the Big Ten tournament with quad one opportunity after quad one opportunity lined up. Ohio State needs that game like oxygen on Sunday on CBS. We need an army with us for each and every show here on Inside College Basketball Now. And we need you to be all you can be. So please subscribe to us on Apple and Spotify. Subscribe and like on YouTube. I will be back Friday morning, one-on-one with Illinois coach Brad Underwood. Illini will host Michigan Friday night in Champaign. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this was Inside College Basketball Now.